What's up, everybody, and welcome to Growing Up Gaming, your weekly podcast where we meet a new person of the internet to discuss their childhood with gaming and how it inspired their lives today. My name is Mitch Power. Again, thank you guys so much for returning each and every week to the show. I hope you're subscribing there on iTunes or Google Play or Spotify or YouTube or one of the many ways you can get the show. I greatly appreciate it. This week on the show, we have our guest. His name is AJ Minotti. Met this man with the help of Twitter, so he was nice enough to share his time and share his stories with me. If you guys want to be on the show just like he was, send me a tweet at MitchPower1116 on Twitter or at the podcast Twitter page, which is at GUG Podcast on Twitter. Without further ado, let's get things started with AJ Minotti. Do you remember what initially got you started playing games? Was it a family member? Was it a friend? Was it some magazine you saw at the store? Like, what got your interest in it to begin with?
All right, so one day, my dad just came home with NES. And it was the one that had, it was the triple pack with Mario, Duck Hunt, and World Class Track Meet.
Okay.
And
like
so, yeah, so it also had the Zapper and the Power Pad. So it's funny, I was trying to think, I was like, when was that? So I had to do all this research online to find out when that was released. Right. And so I've narrowed it down because I've seen some places say 1988 and some places say 1990. But then I know the orange Zapper came out in 1989. We had a gray one. So I'm going to say it was 1988. That's my best guess of when we got started.
How crazy is, like, I just Google searched that triple cart because I personally have never seen that triple cart.
Mm-hmm. Most people have seen the double cart with Mario and Duck Hunt.
Dude, I'm pretty sure they gave out that double cart with, like, samples of Tide. Like, that shit was everywhere.
Had that.
Everywhere. And people had, like, 3 copies for no reason. Like, how do you have more than, why? Why do you have more than one copy of this? I think it was all the whole, like, what I've mentioned before, like, flea markets. It's like, hey, buy this NES. It's got 7 controllers and 4 zappers and 3 copies of this game.
Yeah.
Like, no one needs to know this shit.
Right.
But no, I mean, that's a pretty much, like you said, had a gun, had your trackpad, had your normal game in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I don't know what prompted him to do it that day. Honestly, I think he just, like, my dad always kind of likes, to this day, he likes technology. He likes kind of fancy new gadgets and things. And I think he just thought, like, hey, like, this is a thing that's out there. You know, I got my computer and I don't want the kids messing with that necessarily because, you know, that was back, still DOS. I think technically, if you want to really go back, the first game I ever truly played was Jeopardy on MS-DOS on my dad's 386.
Nice.
And the hard part there was remembering how to spell Jeopardy in the DOS prompt to start it.
Yeah, that was back in the day when you actually could really screw up a computer. And get some shit wrong.
So I knew I just had to type Jeopardy and Jeopardy would turn on. But again, it was like Geopardy.
Is there a case for the game somewhere? Can I remember what this is called?
Yeah, so we had that first thing. I can still remember. It's so funny, like, to think of the weird little flashes you have, like, because in 1988 I was 4 years old, and I could still remember us hooking it up for the first time. You know, the RF adapter. It took an hour. Now, you think about plugging in a console. You just cable, you're done. It's like, whatever. We're like, okay, like, we have to take out the cable line and put this thing in the middle and. Okay, wait, and then this connects here, and then, like, okay, where do we plug in this giant power cable? Because this giant brick. Where can this go? We need an extension cable. Hang on, let's go find one. Okay, everything's static now. Wait, we got to go to channel 3. Wait, we forgot about the VCR was wired in this. Like, it was
oh my God.
A freaking nightmare. But yeah, so we finally got it fired up because we also, I don't remember if we had it all on day one, but I remember early on we had the triple pack. Ghostbusters, because I was very much a Ghostbusters kid, and we had Mickey Mouse Capades and golf. Not like the NES Open golf, that the one that they put on the Switch, or like more legit Mario. It was like, I think before that, where it was like
there was
kind of Mario, but it like was more realistic with the big old quote fingers around it.
Yeah, as realistic as it could be.
Mm-hmm. Right. That was the only game my dad really liked because he could hang in that one. It was like that first day he was better at it than me, and then like I quickly superseded him.
And then of course your dad has that ego, like, yeah, that's right, go out and let's do 18 on the holes right now and see what happens. Like in real life, like he would be like, yeah, I can just. I remember somebody on my show had mentioned before how like the only reason they got a console is because of golf. Like their dad was like, I want a golf game and I can play a golf game, and oh yeah, it happened to be an NES that everybody else can play. I think your dad probably got it too. Like you said, he was big into technology, and I mean, at the time, NES was just everywhere. It was like a VCR. It was like every home had one. Like my grandma's house had one, and I'm like, why? And then later to find out my grandma was all over Tetris and Dr. Mario. Like it was, dude, I remember watching her play those and just being like, you're a pro, Grandma. Like, I could not believe that people could play that game that well. But also, too, she just was, strategic and smart, whereas I'm just some dumb kid, just like, I want to move this piece here. Like, she actually would, like, line things up to the point where it would work out well, and I'm like, I go back and I try to play Dr. Mario on the Switch, the virtual console, or whatever you want to call it, and I suck still. Like, there's times where I try to do it, but I'm like, damn, my grandma has some quick reflexes and had that, like, because they give you like the court, the grid, and they're like, here's a level, go. And if you have it on like 20 and hard and like it's fast as hell, and you're just like
just flying.
It's just like overwhelming. You're like, holy crap! Yeah, my grandma would like blast through every one of those levels like it was nobody's business. So, yeah, I mean, but like it was everywhere. So I'm sure your dad, same thing. It was like new technology. This is the new hot thing, and he's like done, and just probably went and got it.
Most likely. So that was the beginning of the end, as my dad likes to call it.
Yeah, and then with the PC, I wouldn't. Yeah, back then when you actually could really screw things up, like now you can get a virus and you can restore back, and it's not as big of a deal. But like, no, literally, you could like jack up a computer real bad if you really didn't know how.
Yeah, irrevocably.
Right.
Yeah. Gosh, now I'm going to try to think. When was this? I got my first computer. It had to be early 90s. Because I got to the point where I always wanted to dink around my dad, and by that point he'd upgraded to a new machine that had Windows 3.1.
Right.
And he didn't want me screwing with it, so eventually, I got my own computer, and I will never forget. This will take you back when Windows 95 came out. I did not have a CD-ROM drive, so I had Windows 95 on like 40 floppy disks.
Yeah.
And there was that night at dinner, and every 5 minutes I was running upstairs to swap floppies, and my mom did not understand why I kept leaving the dinner table. And I was like, look, you don't understand. If I don't do it this way, this will take 3 days. I need to be on the ball swapping floppies so I could get that sweet, sweet start menu.
Exactly. And also, not to mention, like, going from Windows 3 to 95 was like a gigantic deal.
Oh, never to be done again. Windows 10 is the bones of Windows 95.
Right.
But yeah, 3.1, and even my dad, he had 3.11 because it was the business edition.
Ooh.
Yes. I couldn't tell you what was different about it, but
right. Well, I mean, it's funny, just like they had like, I remember Windows had like Windows XP, but then there was like Windows Millennial Edition.
Oh my God. So I when I was in college, I snuck my way into this small business presentation by Microsoft on the grounds that I was a media freelancer, because I knew at the end they were giving everyone a free copy of the most current version of Office. And I was like, I can use a free copy of Office. So I'm at this like conference center with all these like business people, and this guy from Microsoft is going through like the history of Windows. I think up to that point, I think we were on XP. So, he's going through these slides, 95, 98. He talks about each one. He like clicks the button, ME comes up on the screen, and he just clicks the button again, doesn't say a word.
I remember
just keeps going. Then he goes, okay, yes, Windows ME was a bit of a misstep for us, but we learned a lot. I bet. Dude, my mom, like, I felt bad because my mom, when she bought a computer, she bought it like during ME, and I'm like, oh, and I like all this crap was just like, it was like some stuff sort of worked for it. It would either work for 98 or XP. Here's your active desktop, and now you have a clock on your desktop, but it's going to drain all your system resources.
Yeah, exactly. My poor mom.
Yeah, that was the thing.
She didn't realize. I mean, again, we were just like, cool, new Windows stuff. But that was back when like Windows launches were like fucking events. Like there was midnight launches to go
like
get
going to a movie.
Yeah. Too bad. Like, I mean, obviously that's not happening anymore at all. Like, if anybody showed up to a midnight launch now for a Windows operating system, they probably woke up. Yeah, they completely went like Captain America sleep and just woke up. And they're like, we still do this, right? Like, no one does this.
No more.
No one does this at all. So as far as it goes, obviously your dad got you the NES. So were your parents pretty encouraging when it came to games? Were they pretty understanding as far as like, okay, this is a hobby, or were they ever like, I mean, it sounds like your dad was pretty cool with it just because, like you said, he was into technology. But was your mom ever like, that's a waste of time, you should go do other things?
Not really. I mean, there are two sides of revisionist history in our family to this day where if you ask my mom, she'll say we did nothing but do that like all the time. And if you ask my brothers, and I'd be like, no, we were outside quite a bit, actually. And I'm sure the truth lies in the middle somewhere. You know, where we grew up, the first neighborhood I lived in as a little kid was, you know, it was a lot of kids in the neighborhood. My best friend lived right across the street. So again, in my head, you know, I was outside quite a bit. We just, you know, in nights and rainy days, you were down in the basement playing Nintendo.
Right.
The next neighborhood we lived in, where I lived till college, we had a pool, and so we were outside in that in the summer all the time. And then the kind of local woods was our backyard, so we were back there a lot too. So again, I think we were outside a lot. I'm sure my mom thinks we spent too much time playing video games. So, it was never like a point of contention. Obviously, that was like the go-to punishment. You know, if we were grounded, no more video games, and that's how they got us. And
so, if you got told you were grounded, like, fine, I'll stay inside and play games. Oh yeah, by the way, those are gone too. What?
So the way our house was laid out, where I mostly grew up, it was a ranch, but there was one room above the garage, and that was my bedroom. It was like the complete opposite end of the house from the other bedrooms. So I had like kind of like that whole area to myself. It was very, very great. And that's where I had my computer in my bedroom. And the one time I did something to really piss off my mom, and so she, while I was at school, took the mouse and keyboard away and hid them.
Yep.
And she's like, you know, you don't get these back until you've earned it, blah, blah, blah. Oh, no, blah, blah. I have like 4 more mice and keyboard sets in my closet. So every night, you know, okay, good night, turn the lights off, go in the closet, mouse, keyboard. They weren't my good ones, you know, They weren't the... What was the Microsoft IntelliMouse, the first like laser mouse that had the red? Like, I lost that one, but I still had my old ball mouse. You know, I had to clean it out a little bit, but
right.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't your first choice, but also too, it's better than staring at a computer, not playing it at all, like doing anything with it.
Exactly.
Right. You mentioned like coming home and bringing things, like hiding things. I've had buddies of mine when they got in trouble. It was a similar thing, except for it was the power cord. Like they straight, my mom, like their mom was like, NES power cord gone. I'm like, damn, like you must.
That's hard. That's not a common
someone off. Like, what did you do for your mom to have to reach behind the TV and pull shit out? Like
that rat's nest behind the TV.
Right, exactly. I'm like,
so first of all, what kind of Neanderthals were we when we had wires? And like, how did they just always get so tangled?
Well, it was if you look at the movie A Christmas Story, when he had that like fucking nest of like plug. That's how every behind the TV looked. And like there were surge protectors, but they were just mostly extension cords that were flat. Like you just wanted to plug in. And the worst is later on when I had a Genesis and 32X and Sega CD where each had its own. And you just want to put a gun in your mouth because you're like, I'm going to fry my house. Like, I don't, this isn't good.
This is not great radio, but here I don't know if you could see it on the video up there in the middle in that pile of boxes that I'm still waiting to go through. There's the 32X Sega CD Genesis combo. I don't have the power cables for it. I still need to get new ones, and then I need to figure out whatever way I'm going to hook it up to HD. But yeah, I still have it, and that is like my pride and joy.
Dude,
I love that thing.
We can get to that in a second. That thing, it was fun. Sure, it was fun for all of it. But when it came to funny, like you mentioned, like hiding things, my wife tried to play a prank on me. I came home from work one day and I turned on my 360 and nothing's there. And I'm like, why is nothing here? Why are my games not here? Profile, nothing. And then I was here in the kitchen laughing. She's like, I'm like,
what'd you do?
I'm like, what'd you do? And I look and my hard drive's gone. She just like, the hard drive that just popped it off. And I'm like, all right, cool. Where's the hard drive at? And she's like, it's on top of the cabinet here. I'm just messing with you. I'll get it. I just wanted to see your reaction. She goes to grab it. It falls behind the cabinet 8 feet down to concrete. And it's stuck behind a piece of trim. And she just looks at me like, and I'm like, what just happened? She's like, I am so sorry. And the thing is, and in my head, I'm thinking, number one, how am I going to get this out? Because I'm in an apartment. I have to destroy this piece of trim to get my hard drive there. Number two, it just fell 8 feet onto concrete.
There's no way that's okay.
I was like, that's not good for that. That's last time I checked, you're not supposed to drop hard drives like that. Finally got it out, put it in. Everything was cool, but I looked at her with like that good, like, you are
don't
so
you ever
fucking
talk
lucky.
to me or my son ever
don't
again.
touch my shit again. But again, like, I wasn't mad at her. I was just like, what unfortunate events to happen all at once. So, but no, she, she hasn't touched my shit again though. So
yeah, lesson learned. That's good.
Lesson
learned.
So where did you actually grow up? As far as like, did you grow up where a place where it was good weather outside? Because obviously you mentioned like you had a pool. So obviously, well, that doesn't mean shit. Like you could have grown up anywhere with a pool.
Yeah, we're Northeast Ohio. I don't know if you're familiar with Youngstown.
Okay.
It's right between Cleveland and Pittsburgh, basically.
Right. So you dealt with the winters of just awful. Like,
yes.
Yeah. I grew up in Rockford, Illinois, where, fuck that place is a dump. But, it's a terrible place. But, no, the winters there are just, they're shitty. Were you the type of kid who, because I thought, like, my favorite thing is, as I think back, snow is only fun when you're a kid.
Yeah, absolutely.
When
you're not driving.
Adults, and you guys start driving and dealing with it, it's the worst thing ever. But even back then, like I remember, like when it snowed outside, I would go sledding once, and then like if I got wet at all, like even in my snowsuit, if I got slightly wet, I'd be like, "Fuck this, I'm done. I'm going home."
It was like the first couple of days, you're like, snow, sleds, snowsuits, snowman, building snow forts. All right, it's the best. And then after 4 days of that, you're like, kind of cold. Kind of tired.
Yeah, this isn't too much
stay inside.
Fun. Or, if you're insane kids like I was, where you have sleds and you have ramps, and then there's the inevitable hip bruise where you you went way too fast down the ramp. Mm-hmm. But no, like during those winter times, like I still think if you experience like a 2-week Christmas vacation off school and it was snowing outside and you didn't want to go out, dude, and you were just like, that was your excuse. Like, Mom, I don't want to go outside. Look, it's snowing. Mm-hmm. I'm going to stay inside and play games all day. But at least like you said, your parents for the most part, were pretty cool about it. They weren't really on your butt or whatever. Plus, I'm pretty sure like every guest I've talked to, as long as you had good grades in school, I don't think parents really gave a shit that much. Mm-hmm. There was of course some parents that were out there that were just straight like, like the Waterboy's mom, like video games are the devil, like that kind of shit. But
so my best friend in high school, we played a lot of Counter-Strike together. That was kind of our thing. So if he wasn't at my place just after school hanging out, we were on our computers playing Counter-Strike. And his mom hated that he was doing this. She was kind of like we were very straight and narrow kids. We didn't drink. We didn't do anything we were supposed to do. We were the nerds, the goody two-shoes. But she was still convinced we were up to something all the time, even though we weren't. The worst thing we did was play video games. So she'd come in the room all pissed off that he's playing games. He's like, it's like 4:00 in the afternoon. We just got home from high school. What are you doing? Don't you have homework? And she'd start just tapping the actual screen of his, CRT monitor, trying to turn it off. Very forward thinking on her part, like it was a touchscreen. Yeah. And he'd be like, oh my God, fine, I'm sorry. And he'd just turn the monitor off. Be like, okay, there, I turned it off. And he'd wait like a minute and she'd leave the room. And I'd see in the game, he'd stop moving. We didn't have voice chat. So I couldn't be like, hey, what's going on? So like, I'd see him stop. I'm like, his mom's there. And like 60 seconds later, he comes back, he just turns the monitor back on, goes back to it. She doesn't check on him for another half hour. So
right.
That was our routine.
Yeah. Like I said, some parents were like just hating out there. Again, like I'm glad some parents are out there though. Like for example, like my kids should be quite lucky that I'm into gaming. Cause obviously I understand it completely, but also I'm accepting of their passion. Like both my older kids who are at least older enough, 3 of my kids who are older enough to play games, they, play games and they enjoy it. And I'm happy to see like my daughter playing games and not, did you ever have any brothers or sisters growing up?
I still got 2 younger brothers.
2 younger brothers. What age difference are we looking at?
There's 2 years between each of us.
So that's almost perfect though, because like for the most part you were into similar stuff. It's not like you were so far off or anything. Because like I've talked to some people who have brothers and sisters that they're like 8 years older. I'm like, holy shit! Like that person's into completely different things than you are. So like it's hard to have that kind of commonality and everything. But I'm assuming you and your brothers probably played quite a bit of stuff. Were they into gaming just as much as you were?
Yeah. So it's funny though. In like the earlier years, especially, more so my brother Mike, just because he was like a little bit older. When this was all fairly new, like Chris was still like, a baby.
Right.
But he would watch me play and was very content to do so, to the point where it would get annoying because like, you know, he'd want to watch me play Mega Man because he couldn't play it, but I didn't want to play Mega Man. I was doing something else. No, come on, play Mega Man, play Mega Man. It's like, I don't want to play Mega Man right now. Like, leave me alone.
Right.
And so that would go on for quite a long time. You know, eventually then, you know, it got to the point where they were old enough to play. Then it became the fight over who's playing.
Right.
You know, co-op games were obviously not so much an issue. We played, you know, a lot of Chip and Dale and, you know, things of that ilk. But
Chip and Dale's awesome.
Oh, that's
a great game.
So good. So eventually what ended up, the breakdown that happened, because, you know, everything had to have ownership, even though it was all like in the same house and like everyone was using it. But like essentially the Sega stuff was mine and the Super Nintendo was Mike's. And then Chris, like, especially when he was younger, he was more the athlete, I guess, in the family. So his gaming, you know, I wouldn't say he's not a gamer by any means, but he was much more, especially as we got older. He kind of would pick one game and stick to it, and that was his game. Like Tony Hawk, for example. When the first Tony Hawk came out, Tony Hawk was all he played. Whereas, like, Mike and I would bounce around to anything and everything.
Right.
But yeah, so, like, you know, we all had TVs in our bedrooms, so we kind of split, like, what was in whose room, so everyone had something. But we all had the thing that was ours. So yeah, mine was always the Sega stuff.
Right. I mean, and I think I find that another reason, like, I think back in, like, high school and stuff, because, like, if you played games, like, if you were athletic and, like, you had other hobbies besides gaming, like, example, every person who was on the football team only played Madden. Like, that's all they gave a shit about. Like, they didn't seem to care about other games. I stopped playing games completely to skateboard, and the only game I gave a shit about was Tony Hawk. Because Tony Hawk, it's funny, video games got me out of video games. Because I played Tony Hawk Pro Skater, realized how fucking cool skateboarding is, stopped playing video games for 4 years just to skateboard and do nothing else, and then got back in video games, and now I'm fine. Also too fat and old to skate. It sucks. It happens.
Yeah,
but
you get there.
Right, never too old and fat to play video games. That's all you gotta say there, right? But yeah, I mean, I noticed that, like, if you were a game, like, if you played multiple games, like, that was always, you know, some people had that option where, like, they would do that, but then some people were just too busy with sports and stuff to do all the games. The only game I noticed that, like, everybody's, like, it didn't matter what type of gamer you were, if you were, like, all about sports and then you just played one sports game or whatever, GTA. When that happens, like, it didn't give a shit. Yeah, like, everybody played GTA. Like, everyone
for
me,
played that. It was Halo was that game for most people.
That was another game too.
It was Madden and Halo. Like, everyone played that. Before that it was GoldenEye.
Yeah, and that was the thing, like, with me is, like, I never got into I never knew too many people with N64s, so, like, it was all me, it was all PlayStation shit, and, like, the whole GoldenEye Perfect Dark, everything of that fucking whizzed over my head. Like, I never had friends that were, like, super into it, but, you know, later on I hear of, like, everybody I talk to on this show is talking about, like, dude, GoldenEye was ridiculous. Like,
that game got serious. Yeah, absolutely. And it's so funny because, like, I played with my friends because it was easy to play. You know, you had the N64 with the 4 controller ports, and you could do the split screen. But that was around the same time I was getting into PC gaming proper. Mm-hmm. You know, I was playing Quake 2, and to me, it was just so much superior. Like to the point, I've never actually beaten the GoldenEye campaign because I found it boring. Yeah, everyone else was like, this is the greatest thing ever. I was like, there's none. Look at this.
Quake 2. You haven't played anything on PC.
Look at this running on my Voodoo graphics card. 60 frames per second. High res 1024 by 768 graphics.
That sounds like
N64 is nothing on this.
Yeah. Like, I mean, dude, I remember hearing, you know, stories of, like, all of the, again, like, I didn't get into PC stuff, so, like, the Quake, the Unreal tournaments, like, Counter-Strikes, like, all those days of hearing people talk about those games too, the same thing is, like, I can't imagine, like, obviously it was superior in, like, so many ways. You hear about, like, people like Joe Rogan, talk about how he was obsessed with Quake and how he got like a T1 line just to play Quake, and he's like,
I wanted a T1 line so bad. Okay, so
T1 line back then was like your pipe dream. It was like the holy grail of internet.
Well, I've since found out that my father-in-law actually did have a T1 line to the house. Yeah, like, I was like, what was it like? He was like, oh, it's pretty sweet. It was, yeah.
What was it like? It's like story time. You just sit cross-legged, like hands on your chin, like, tell me how it was.
Well, because so the business he owns like this pharmaceutical database company, And he started himself, like literally it was just like him and a couple other people that he put it together. And so he did a lot from his house. So he had a legitimate need for this constant high-speed internet connection.
Right.
T1 line was the only solution. And it's like I said, like I found this out from like a year or so ago. And I was like, do you have any idea how badly I always wanted a T1 line? He goes, yeah, it's pretty awesome. The whole history of internet connectivity in my house is kind of funny because my dad was a doctor. So, he was getting phone calls at all hours of the day, so it was always important that the phone be open. So we had a second phone line installed in the house just for the internet.
Right.
Because, the days of dial-up, that tied up your phone line.
Yeah, exactly.
Can't have
you need
that.
the phone line free. You can't, absolutely.
Yeah, so we had the second phone line, and... Well, then, a few years later, now AJ has his own computer. Well, now it's the fight between Dad and I of who's going to be online, or if he's online, you can't go online right now because I'm expecting a phone call, blah, blah. Right. So finally that got annoying. So now we had the third phone.
Oh my God.
And that line was only run to my room, to my computer. And I had a phone on it too. So I had to tell my friends, like, if you need to call me at night, call this number first. But if it doesn't ring, that means I'm online. As long as it's not like after 10 o'clock, then you can call it. It was, oh God, the things we did before cell phones. It's insane. But so we found, the cable internet's coming. And where we live, it's not Comcast or anything like that. It's a regional provider called Armstrong Cable. And we knew they were beginning the rollout of cable internet. And so me and my best friend, the one who used to live across the street from me, every day after high school, we'd pick up my brothers from the middle school, and then I'd drop him off home, and we'd go home. And every day we'd park the car, because the high school got out a half hour sooner. We'd get to the middle school, park the car, and we'd take turns calling the cable company to find out if cable modem was available. We did this every day. And I will tell you now, that number was 330-758-6411. That's the number to the cable company.
It got in your head.
So for months, we call. I call, he call. I call, he call. And the one day, what's your address? Indian Trail, how? Oh, sorry, sir. It's still in development for that area. Okay, very good. He takes the number. Four Seasons Trail. Yes, sir. We can schedule a technician to come out next week. I just looked at him like, you motherfucker. And his dad had given him the go ahead. They installed it. Oh, I went over to his house. He fires up Napster. He's like, check this out.
Yes.
I was just about downloads to say a song instantly. And I'm like, God, it was like 3 more months till finally, we stopped doing our ritual call. So I would wait till I got home. I pulled in the driveway, parked the car. Oh, let me call Armstrong, 758-6411. Address. Yes, sir. Would you like to schedule a technician? Okay, wait. Yeah, no, I need to check with my dad. I'll call you back. My dad was home from work he walks in the door. I'm like, Dad, cable internet. He's like, what are you talking about? I go, it's here. It's ready. Can we call the guys?
The future.
He's like, he goes, well, whose computer are they going to hook it up to? No Wi-Fi.
Right. That's a hardest sell
mine?
ever.
Mine? No, mine. Well, okay, hang on. I'll figure this out. So, again, my room was on that second floor. There was some attic space that went over part of the house coming out of my closet. So I had to I found two 50-foot Ethernet cables and a coupler.
There you go.
So I could run a cable out of my room into my closet through the attic. I punched a hole in his ceiling in a closet in his office with a screwdriver, dropped the cable through that to the back of his computer. It was ugly as hell. My mom hated it, but it worked. And we had a basic for the time router. And that's how we did it.
Dude, I remember that's so funny because as soon as you mentioning getting high speed internet, I remember the first thing was Napster and LimeWire and just how quickly can you download illegal shit. It was so fast, dude.
We would get together and play board games, and one of the ones we were really into back in high school was Risk.
Yep.
And we're over at my buddy's house playing, and he had just gotten his cable internet. So again, we were all bewildered at how fast this is. So we're at this point. He's out of the game already, and I'm looking at the board, and I'm kind of looking ahead, and I go, I'm going to win after my next turn. So I take my turn, set myself up, and go, okay, I'm going to win. So I turn to him, and I go, hey, run on your computer, fire up Napster, download Flight of the Valkyries, and play it on my next turn. He goes, well, download fast enough? I go, I think it will. And I'm watching, no, that's what he's doing. I see the progress bar. I'm like, oh my God, it's going to be done in a second. This is amazing. dice come back around. I pick up the dice. I like point at him, ba-dum, ba-dum, dun, 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 and I start rolling the dice. You're such an asshole! Like, and your country's gone, and your country's gone. Dun, 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 dun.
Dude, it was like, if you had that in a CD burner back in the day, you could just make money at like high school. Like, I knew so many people that were burning mixtapes because they're just like, what songs do you need? Oh, I'll have this done tonight. Like, what do you mean tonight? They're like, oh no, I got internet. You have that. It was, and I remember getting it for the first time. Like, my cable internet story was, I only got it for Xbox Live. I didn't get it for any other reason. I didn't even have a computer at the time. Like, I literally just got it for Xbox Live.
Xbox was like, how audacious that it didn't have dial-up.
Right. No, but also at the same time, I was like, no, this is going to be awesome. Like, I knew it was going to be good, but I got it literally just for Xbox Live. But the cable guy shows up and he's like, all right, cool. And this was bought before, like, he had his own modem he brought with him and all that shit. He's like, all right, cool. Where do we set this up? And I'm like, right there. And I pointed at the Xbox, and he looked at me like I called his mother a whore. He was like, what? And I'm like, no, the Xbox right there. And he's like, where's your computer? I'm like, I don't have one. I bought it for this reason. And he's like, hold on. And he like disappeared for a little bit. And I'm like, what did I do? What is wrong? And then like he comes back and he's like, okay, you're going to have to deal with this. This is the first time I've ever done this. This old dude looked like he had never seen a goddamn game console in his life. Mm-hmm. So he's looking it up and he's like calling people, trying to like make sure it's working. Probably he's like, how do I test it? How do I test to make sure this works? And it's just like, it looked like I'd just given him like algebra and Chinese. And I'm like, here, figure it out. And he looked bewildered. And then he's like, how do I know if it works? I'm like, oh, fucking Christ. And I just grab a game, connects to live. It works. And he's like, okay, thanks, bye. And just like took it, like he just looked so insane at me because he like had no clue on what he was doing. Because like I said, at that time Xbox Live was like brand new, and
I was in the beta for Xbox Live. It was very exciting.
Yeah, and that dude straight up looked at me like he had no clue what to do, and I was like, I'm sorry, but yeah, this is what I needed it for. So, I mean, also too, the whole aesthetic. You didn't give a shit about aesthetics. You were just like, hey, you got internet, I got internet, Dad, we're good. And your mom's like, that is the ugliest shit I've ever seen. Yeah, that happens though. I mean, again, it's about function, not cosmetics.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I was telling her, I was like, but look, the phone lines are freed up. The line 3, now all my friends will just call that because I'm not have to be on it anymore. So, like, we're all good to go. We're all great. It's wonderful.
I love the sell, like, as soon as it's like, so what computers is going on? And then that was the moment you're like, fuck. Mine? Question mark? Like, yeah, right. So as you were, I mean, like I said, you had a PC, you had an NES, as you were growing up, and then like you had mentioned like how your brothers kind of like each of you guys had your own stuff. So did you guys do Genesis and Sega Genesis, or Genesis and Super Nintendo? So you guys kind of each had your own thing to do?
Look, we had a 3DO.
Jesus
like,
Christ.
I think really, truly the only thing we didn't have like in the 90s was the CDI. Because we played it at Best Buy and didn't really see it. Yeah, well, so the 3DO was great because it had this. If anyone had a 3DO, they'll remember this pack-in disc that came with it. It had like a demo for that terrible Jurassic Park game. It had an episode of the Batman animated series. It had like a few other like random games. But like watching that episode of Batman, it was like, this is incredible. You don't have to rewind it. Like, this is the future. It was like, DVDs like a few years before DVDs, but like it was so mind blowing. But the best game on the 3DO was and I think on GOG now. It's Mega Race. It was like it was kind of like that. It's kind of a trope now. It's the futuristic blood sport racing game thing with like the game show TV host, but he was like live action video, so it looked amazing. Like I'm pretty sure like all the tracks were just like FMVs, and then the cars were just sprites. And I'm sure if you go back today, it's like incredibly primitive. But at the time,
I'm looking at screenshots right now, and it is.
Look at this.
It is wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dude, the whole CD genre though, like the whole like at the FMV videos, and like I remember people losing their shit, like, oh my god, it's full motion video, it's great, and it was the size of like a postage stamp on your CD.
Well, because I had the Genesis, and then I at some point I honestly can't remember what prompted it, but we got the Genesis Model 2, I don't know what happened at Model 1. I'm sure it's somewhere in a box, God knows where. But then that's when the Sega CD happened, and it had Sonic CD. And I was a huge Sonic the Hedgehog fan. Like, read the comics, watched the show. So, like, there was a Sonic CD game, a new Sonic game I didn't have yet. I need to buy this thing for it. Okay, we'll figure this out. So you get the CD, and that came with Sewer Shark. And again, you're like, oh my God, it's real. The graphics, it's real people. This is amazing. Like, Sewer Shark was such a piece of shit. But, like, it didn't matter. It didn't matter. Look how good this looks. And then they put Mad Dog McCree, and, like, I could play it at home. Oh my God. Are you kidding me? Amazing.
Yeah, the whole, like, I appreciate them trying to, like, transform the Genesis to make it work. Like, I had an old school, the Genesis 1 model, which, by the way, had a headphone jack and a volume slider for whatever goddamn reason. No one used it. I didn't know a single person that used that.
I used it. I used it because it was there. I was like, well, I need to plug headphones in this, clearly. Because, keep in mind, unless you had, like, all the exact right AV hookups, that was the only way to get stereo sound. Unless you had, like, all the crazy cables and everything like that.
That's true.
Actually, this reminds me. So, digging around the basement and all my dad's old shit, I found these two huge, like, old school hi-fi speakers. And I was like, Dad, what are these for? He goes, it's like an old hi-fi I had in college. And I was like, huh. And I'm looking at the wires, and for whatever reason, the TV I had in my room had the correct, what do you call those wires where you, like, lift the little tab and just slide the wire in? It's got a name.
I know the
nano wires, I think it's called. Yeah. And, like, my TV had hookups for those. I was like, no shit. So I, like, lugged these giant, 3-foot high hi-fi speakers, and they worked.
Nice.
I had this, like the best you could imagine, like, stereo sound. And so, like, when I need these cables for my Sega, I need the red and white. Like, where do I go for these? I guess I'm going to Radio Shack. And yeah, I got, like, legit stereo running. I was like, oh, this is amazing.
I remember my grandma had one of those giant projector TVs, okay? Like, the ones that were, like, 60-inch, but it was, like, freestanding, it had speakers and all that shit. And I remember she was like, hey, the speakers went out on my TV. And, of course, she doesn't repair them. She's just like, I'm just going to buy a new TV. I'm like, all right, cool. And it was an older TV, and she's like, do you want the speakers, or do you want this TV? She thought I was just going to throw it out. I'm like, Grandma, I'll take it. And she's like, the speakers don't work. I'm like, I'll figure it out. I don't care. I'll take it. And I remember taking it home, and out of it, it had red and white outputs from that TV. So I bought, like, this cheap, like, computer speaker setup that had, like, two speakers and a subwoofer, hooked it up, and I had a big screen TV. But what was funny is, like, it was me and my wife at the time at the apartment. We didn't have our son yet at the time, but that was when we had the living room that had this giant ass TV there, but then also still had a TV for my wife to, like, watch her shit. So, like, I would sit there on one couch and, like, play my games and do my thing, and she was just sitting there watching TV, and of course we would have to fight over whose shit is too loud, because it's just like, your shit's too loud, turn it down. Turn it down. That was before we could plug in headphones into a controller, you know what I mean? Which, by the way, if that's not the greatest thing that next gen has brought us, I'm sorry. Like, graphics are cool and 4K is cool. Plugging in headphones into a controller and doing that, I was like,
yeah,
that's
genius. Very convenient.
Thank you so much. Especially as a parent now who has, like, kids who are like, the other day my daughter didn't realize that her headphones weren't plugged in all the way. So she kept cranking up the volume. She's like, I can't hear anything. To the point where she was turning up the TV volume, not realizing anything. And she's playing Fortnite in there, and her room is, it sounds like a goddamn war zone. And there's like, boom, boom. I'm like, I just opened her door. I'm like, what the hell is going on? And she's like, what? I'm like, you have a headset. I just bought you a headset for your birthday. Why are you not using it? She goes, I am, Dad. And I'm like, no, you're not. I promise you you're not, because this thing's so loud. And I push it in a little more.
Snap,
click,
yeah.
And then she's like, oh. I'm like, yeah, thank you. Fucking turn her volume down to 0 on her TV. I'm like, use those. That's why I got them for you. So you had, like, the good thing, though, is that the fact that you basically had an option to play everything, essentially. Like, there wasn't really any console that you missed out on in those early days, because essentially...
No, and it's so stupid, because, like, the console wars of the 90s were a thing. And all of my brothers and I, because, again, it really went back to Sonic the Hedgehog for us, but we were diehard Sega fans. Even though we had a Super Nintendo, and N64, it didn't matter, because you had to pick a side.
Right.
And our side was Sega. And, to this day, I will still maintain, we had the better Jurassic Park game. We had the better Aladdin game.
For sure.
Mortal Kombat 1 was better on the Sega. You can't deny it. Like, even though I played Super Metroid. I played Link to the Past. And today, if you ask me, Super Nintendo was probably the better system. But it didn't matter. Back then, ride or die.
Exactly. Yeah, like if you look back and you say to yourself, no, Genesis had better games. I'll just throw this out there. When the Genesis collection, or the Sega Genesis Classic got announced, and the Super Nintendo Classic got announced, which one did people actually give a shit about?
So here's the thing. So I actually have two Super Nintendo Classics because I accidentally pre-ordered a European one because I was afraid Nintendo was going to fuck it up and I forgot to cancel it. So I have two. I modded that one, so that's how I justified it. That one was like its announcement. I think coming off the NES Classic, it's like, well, sure they did that, of course. Right. But seeing the Genesis one get announced and seeing that M2 is actually doing the emulation, so it's not going to suck like those terrible arcade ones. I'm strangely more excited for that one just because I think there is a little more of a nostalgia factor for me, because that was like my thing as a kid more so.
Right. So
I actually am super pumped. In fact, what I did. So you're familiar with like all the 8-bit do controllers.
Mm-hmm.
So they released this kit called the 8-bit do DIY, where they give you the little PCB board. You take they do it for Genesis, Nintendo, Super Nintendo.
Right.
You take the controller apart, replace this board, and now it becomes a Bluetooth capable
wireless controller. Right.
Yes. I couldn't find my old Genesis 6-button controller, so I bought one secondhand. And what I found was, even though they look more or less the same, the Japanese controllers were actually a little bigger. And this board was designed for the Japanese controller, so the mode button got stuck. And the mode button is like your Bluetooth sync button.
Oh, no.
So I could jerry-rig it by like shoving a piece of paper in there and not tightening the screws quite all the way. But It was like, oh, this is annoying. So Retrobit recently released their own line of new 6-button Genesis controllers, supposedly made from the molds originally used by Sega.
Jesus.
They made two versions, a USB one that just go into a PC or a RetroPie, or a legit Sega controller.
Like Genesis port. And
like would work in an old Genesis. And they also made not only the black, but like a cool translucent blue. So here's me, the gears are going, oh, wait a minute. So I buy this cool translucent blue one in the original Genesis format, pop that DIY sucker in there, we're back in business. And it just came last week, sure enough, worked just fine.
Nice.
So now I've got like this translucent blue, because blue's my favorite color, 6-button Genesis controller, like legit. Like I still have that old controller. In fact, I took that new PCB board, put it into the old controller just to have it.
Right.
They feel identical. The D-pad has that same kind of mushiness to it. So now when the Genesis Classic comes out, I have the little USB receiver. I'm going to pop that in there. Boom. Perfect.
Yeah, and I mean, have they announced that? I don't think they've announced if it's 3-button, 6-button, if it's wireless.
It's 3. So
it's 3.
It's 6-button in Japan, but 3-button in America, which
is
weird. Of course,
they hate us. Like, why?
Right? It's like the PlayStation Classic not having a DualShock.
That was ridiculous.
Oh yes, dude. That whole system was a disgusting disgrace.
Disgrace,
I mean, it depends on the games that ultimately come with the Genesis Classic, I guess. Sure. And we only have half of them so far because. Aside from fighting games, support for that controller was always weird. Like I remember Lion King benefited from it really a lot because otherwise you had to do weird button combos for all the moves as adult Simba.
Right.
But aside from fighting games, not a ton of games really needed it. So they could probably get away with it.
The moment I got that 6-button though, I did not ever want to go back to a 3-button.
Oh, absolutely. Because not only did you have the buttons, but it was a little more comfortable to hold.
It was it was smaller.
Nicer shape and everything. Yeah.
It didn't feel like such a batarang. It didn't feel like such a monstrosity. What's crazy to me is like you mentioned that the Japanese controller was slightly bigger than the American version. What's funny is like one of the reasons that, and I mean this could be complete bullshit. One of the reasons that apparently they made the Xbox One, or I'm sorry, the original Xbox. Remember the original Xbox Duke controller?
The Duke, and then you had the S from Japan.
Right. The S was created specifically because of the Japanese market, because it was just like the controller was just so goddamn big they couldn't like do it. So they made the S controller specifically in reaction to the Japanese market just straight hating the controller.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so more of that came out because they like re-released the Duke like a few months back.
Yep.
And supposedly part of its size was just they couldn't get the PCB board to be any smaller. But then like before the Japanese launch, they did figure it out, which is like maybe you should have really tried a little harder in the first place.
Because that original
the
controller...
S controller was great. It was a really nice controller.
So good. Yeah, the S controller is good. That original one, I remember playing Halo at my buddy's house like the day the Xbox came out and Halo and everything. And I remember just like... he handed it to me and I fucking laughed. I'm like, what is this, dude?
Well,
this is so big.
Because in so many ways, the Xbox was kind of like the heir apparent to the Dreamcast.
Yeah.
And honestly, coming off a Dreamcast controller to the Duke wasn't like too jarring, because that Dreamcast controller, when you go back to it, it's a weird controller.
It is.
It's like that weird circle shape, but still have like straight grips.
Right.
It's very strange. So like the Duke wasn't too far removed from that. But the S was clearly better in every way.
Yeah, the S, I remember like when I bought my Xbox, because I used to work at a video game store when I got my Xbox, and then I remember when we worked at the game store, like people would bring in an S controller, and I was just like, I'm buying this the moment. Like, I am immediately buying. And I remember having 4 S controllers, and I remember what's funny is like Microsoft never had an official wireless controller. I remember back then the only people that did was GameCube.
Yeah, the
Wavebird was like the only officially licensed one, but like Logitech made these awesome controllers for PS2 and Xbox that were wireless. The Xbox one was slightly weird, but it was like an official wireless solution. But the PS2, like official Logitech, like wireless controller was a godsend. Like people loved that thing to death. But I remember having like 3 of the S controllers and then that wireless one. Cause again, like dude, wireless back then was like the holy grail. I had 4 Wavebirds.
Well, do you remember? Did you ever have like a wireless controller for the 16-bit systems when they were infrared?
Because they were awful.
It was the worst. Yeah, it was so bad. Like, because you had to keep that line of sight locked, and like, God forbid, you just shift in your seat a little bit, and it was just done. It was like, oh God, like it was like worse than a wire. It was terrible.
Of course, yeah. Like I didn't, and that's why I was saying. Like every time I would go to buy one, it was almost like there was a dude at the back of the store going, "Don't do it." Okay, I guess I won't.
But you know what? I miss back then. We used to have so many more weird accessories. The nice thing was, like back in the day, like Hollywood Video used to rent a lot of these, so I got to try them all. But there was, oh God, I can't remember the names of them. There was the one for the Genesis. It was like this octagon you put on the ground.
That was the Defender. That was
and the pictures made it look like you're just going to kick and punch, and it's going to be like VR, like the characters in Eternal Champions are going to do the same thing. It's like no, it was like if you do a punch high, that's the A button, but a kick low is the C button. But if you move over here, that's the start button. It was like it made no sense.
Yeah, it was real bad. Like there was a lot of just really bad third-party accessories, and I remember the Defender being one of them. Of course, there was the Power Glove, which that
was a class of its own. There was a thing, and again, don't know the name. It was basically a subwoofer you wore as a backpack. But it was like, it was supposed to be like feel the impact of every explosion. It literally was just like, I now understand this now, but as a kid I didn't get it. It was a subwoofer. But I remember playing Doom on the 32X of this thing, thinking how amazing it was. You shoot the rocket launcher in Doom, your whole body's vibrating. It's like, this is amazing. I'm going to have scoliosis.
I was going to say, I'm sure that's good for your overall health later on in life, right?
Right.
You put that in an old man and it just breaks him. Yeah, and then, as far as, like, I remember gun-wise, I'm looking it up right now, they had the Menacer for Genesis, which probably went with 3 games.
But it, like, snapped apart in, like, 6 different configurations.
Yeah.
Because that was so much better than the Super Scope, clearly, because it did all that shit.
The Super Scope. It's so crazy that, like, the Zapper was, like, the main one, just because it came with everything. Like, the Zapper was, like, the mainstay, and then, like, Super Scope and Menacer barely took off. And I remember on PlayStation, all those, like, I think it was Namco that did all the time trial or time crisis games and stuff, and then they just started like packing their own guns with them. But obviously,
there were some good ones for Dreamcast because you had all the House of the Dead games.
Right.
They had a really good Zapper for the Dreamcast. I remember.
Yeah, and I mean it's funny because like that whole like genre seemed to die, and then when the Wii showed up, it like revitalized it because it's like,
well, right? Because what else are you gonna do? Like that controller's made for it.
It's a light gun, as they say. It's essentially a light gun. I'm looking at how many list of Menacer compatible games. There were 8.
Oh my!
Wow. One of them, by the way, Terminator 2, the arcade game, which was probably going to be your best bet. That was always the best thing, though, is like when they took those arcade light gun games and put them in consoles, because like you were like, "Hey, I can beat this."
Right?
I don't have to waste $20. There's nothing wrong with that. As far as it goes with you kept going, and so was it just you guys got both again, PlayStation and 64? Did anybody go Saturn?
Oh yeah, that's where's the Saturn right now? I think it's at Mike's.
Good Lord.
Oh, absolutely. Oh no, and again, same thing. Even though the PlayStation was far more superior in hindsight. Oh God, I loved my Saturn. It came with Virtua Fighter as the launch version, but then they did that free re-release of it that was like way improved. What was it called? Virtua Fighter I don't know if it's Reloaded. It had a subtitle to it, but it was a much more arcade perfect port of the original. But you had Daytona on that thing. Then you start getting all the weird stuff they did. Well, actually, it's funny. I think today is the 15th anniversary? No, 25th.
Yeah, for Sega Saturn.
Saturn. What is it? What's my math? Yeah, it had to be 25 years ago, right? No.
Pretty sure. I think I saw something on.
What year did that come out? Is it?
I'm looking.
24th. It was on
birthday.
Yeah, 24th. Okay, I was going to say somewhere around.
Happy 24th birthday, Sega Saturn. The console doomed by its America launch.
No, because
that's literally the article on Forbes.
So, as I tell these stories, it makes me sound like a completely spoiled brat, but whatever. So we the whole thing with the Saturn was their whole surprise launch. Like, hey, fuck you guys, the Saturn's out today. And, it was E3, but, it's not E3 today where you watch the live stream. It's, they told a room of press and then it showed up in EGM a month later. Right. So, I remember, do you remember like old school Toys R Us, the way that used to work back in the, where like there was the one row of the games with like little cards, but then there was like the hardware row, and there was like this glass case all the way down with consoles and controllers and all that shit. And I remember we were just in Toys R Us one day, and I think my dad said like, hey, we could go, like, we'll get a game. And we're like, oh, okay, sweet. And we're walking down that aisle, and it's just like, is that the Sega Saturn? It's out? Dad! Like, look, this, like, I think we just so overwhelmed him with like sheer enthusiasm. He's like, okay, sure, whatever, fine. And so, yeah, like, we took it home, and I remember it had like that sizzle video that came on a disc with it that like was a trailer for all these games. There's that voice like, play games on the Sega Saturn, play your games in the 21st century, and leave the rest of the world behind. I remember playing Bug, the original Bug. I don't know how much Saturn you played, but Bug was like
none,
this, like,
because none. I went straight to PlayStation. I was like, Saturn, I'm good.
So Bug was like, it was like a 2D platformer, but then sometimes you went up and down.
Okay.
This blew my mind. Like, oh my God, it's 3D. Look at this. But the hands down, the greatest game possibly for that system that made it all worth it was always Panzer Dragoon.
Right.
Because it had not only the graphics, but that orchestral music that played to it. Like no game had ever done that. And I just remember being so blown away by that.
The only games I remember people talking about were Knights and Panzer Dragoon. Like, that's it. Like, those are the
And the funny thing is, Knights, in hindsight, like they did like the Knights HD release a few years ago. I was like, oh, finally, what I've always wanted. It turns out maybe I didn't really want it.
Yeah, those nostalgia glasses aren't that great.
Now, Knights was good because you got Christmas Knights, which was like, in like a Christmas issue of one of the magazines, they put this demo disc called Christmas Nights, where they took the first level of Nights, just gave it a Christmas skin, played some Christmas music, and then there was also the ability to play that level just running around as Sonic. It was like the only time you could play as Sonic in 3D on the Saturn, aside from Sonic Jam. And it was like the greatest thing. Like, this is perfect. This is all I need from Knights, really. So right. I still have that disc. It's wonderful.
I'm literally looking at this Forbes article about the Saturn, and it says, like, they basically told them it was out immediately for $400. And it says on here, firstly, retailers were up in arms. Aside from a handful of partners who had small stockpiles of the Saturn, others didn't have it and wouldn't get it for a long time.
Yeah, so saying, like it was like out, but not really. Like, we just got, I mean, truth be told, we got insanely lucky that we even got it in the first place.
And then there's like, I didn't even know this, but KB Toys, which Sega didn't initially provide the Saturn to, felt so slighted by the move, it never stocked it. KB Toys walked out of that place going, fuck you, Sega, and never stocked a Saturn. That's crazy.
That's great.
But again, also, kind of a dick move to just be like,
well, sure, it was so, well, they were terrified of the PlayStation, because then that same E3 was then when, the guy from Sony just goes up to the podium and just goes, $299, and then walked away, and it was like freaking out, like, well, they're dead in the water. And it was so this is good. So the way we got our PlayStation, we knew it was a thing. We wanted to get one, and my parents were just like, oh, you just got a Saturn. Like, you don't need another game system. blah, blah, blah. So we're at my brother's football practice. Mike and I are walking around the parking lot, and there's this wad of cash sitting on the ground. And again, goody two-shoes kids. We pick it up. We go to my dad. We go, Dad, we found this money on the ground. He goes, how much is there? We count it. It is literally $300 in 20s.
Oh, my God.
And my dad goes, well, what are you guys going to do? And I said, well, we should find who this belongs to, right? He goes, well, go ahead. So we literally, and I will take this to the grave, went to every person at this football practice to see if anyone had lost some money. And no one claimed it. And I mean, it was like the end of the practice. People were leaving. We talked to everybody, and we went to Dad, and we're like, Dad, like, we couldn't find who this money belongs to. He's like, you talked to everybody. Yes, we did. We asked every parent here. Well, I guess it's yours now. What do you want to do with it?
Toys R Us, let's go.
Sony PlayStation cost $2.99, and we have since developed a theory in the years that my dad wanted to get us the PlayStation, but didn't want to piss off our mother.
Wow.
So he conveniently happened to drop this money where he knew we'd find it.
That's like a conspiracy theory up there with like aliens exist and the government knows about it and like all these inside jobs. It's
we've never tried to prove it. But that is how we got our PlayStation.
Dude, by the way, also, how did nobody just say, did you lose money?
Well,
yeah, I did.
We didn't walk around saying, did you lose $300?
Did you
it was
lose,
just, did anyone lose
something?
We found some money on the ground. Did anyone lose it? It could have been $5.
Right. I remember I found like $20 in Orion's like restaurant parking lot, and I was like, I just found it on the ground, and I picked it up, and I looked at my grandma, and my grandma's like, what are you going to do? And I looked around, and there was no one around, and I'm just like, And I just fucking walked in my grandma's car. I was like, if there was somebody that walking past me and I saw it on the ground, I would have been like, hey, is this yours? I've done that before in like lines now, because like I'll be in McDonald's line, somebody will drop money in there. I'm like, hey, you drop some money. I could be a dick and just not say anything. But no, I had the $20. I did the fucking look left, look right, no one there. I don't know who it is. Looks like it's
finders
mine now.
keepers, I guess, yeah.
But you should, I was going to say, did you ever ask your dad, did you set that up?
We never have. Maybe we don't want to know the truth. Also, he probably would forget at this point, but
he's like, absolutely not. That doesn't sound like me. Actually,
no, it actually sounds a lot like him.
It sounds like a lot like me. No, no, but dude, like again, you got a PlayStation, man. Who gives a shit?
Right, exactly.
So during all these times when you were getting all these different consoles, was there ever a time where like a brother felt slighted? Like, fuck, I have the wrong one.
Not really. I mean, because it was once we got to the 3-console system like that, it was good because the Sega stuff was in my room, which eventually became the Xbox, and Nintendo stuff was in Mike's room, and the Sony stuff was in Chris's room. So we all kind of had our niche. And like I said, Chris was playing the Tony Hawk, so he was good on the PlayStation, and I was doing my Saturn thing, and Mike had the 64, and that's kind of where everything landed. So it was good times. The mid '90s were very, very good times. Late '90s, excellent.
Absolutely.
And, but again, we're pretty lucky. We were very close growing up. We're still close to this day. So it was never too much of an issue to be like, okay, can we stay up till 1 a.m. playing, N64 in your room? Like, yeah, sure. Like, of course. So like, we just do that, and it was fine.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, like, again, there wasn't any brother that just was like a wild dickhead and be like, nope, you guys stay out of my room. We're not doing this today. You guys are.
I mean, I'm sure there are times when like we pull rank where like, if I wanted to play like Ocarina of Time and Mike wanted to play, it's like, no, the Nintendo 64 is mine. I'm sure that happened. I'm sure I did it too.
I'm sure you got into a fight and he'd be like, get out of my room. You're not playing my PlayStation. But why?
Yeah. That absolutely happened. But it was never anything.
When Dreamcast happened, did you get Dreamcast and go, like, you were kind of like mid cycle? That was the problem. It's like Dreamcast came out in between, like, it came out like early but late. Like, it was weird.
Well,
like,
so Dreamcast. The funny thing is, remember this, the summer before it released in September, you could rent it at Hollywood Video.
Right.
So we rented from Hollywood Video. What Hollywood Video did not give you with your rental was a VMU for memory storage.
Of course not, because, I mean, memory cards, what... Yeah.
Right.
Well, no, PlayStation had them.
No, we knew what they were.
Yeah,
they
PlayStation had them.
They didn't have them available. So
right.
We have our Sonic Adventure and this Dreamcast that's like 3 months early. And we, for whatever reason, it didn't end up in my room. I don't know how I lost that fight. It was in Chris's room. But we had to, like, beg our mother to understand, please, don't turn it off. We're leaving it on purpose, because if you turn it off, all of our progress in Sonic Adventure gets erased and we have to start it over. Like, this is going to be on for a week. Please don't turn it off. Like, just get this, because she'd always turn the stuff off when we left it on. It's like, Mom, just don't do it. Just don't do it. Just don't do it. And she did it. Halfway through the game, click, all gone. No, start it over. Terrible.
Yeah, like, that was the problem. Like, I remember PlayStation, same thing. I remember turning off, turning on. I'm like, where the hell? Why is it not working? What's going on? Memory.
we had for the PlayStation. I had a regular memory card. Then remember they also had like this weird. It was like the multi-memory card with the little.
Don't fucking mention those to me because I'm triggered by that. Like,
well, me too. Because that's why I never beat Final Fantasy VII, because the fucking thing died when I was on disc 2, and I wasn't going to replay the whole half of the game again.
Right.
So yeah, I never beat Final Fantasy VII because of that.
I grew up and my family wasn't as fortunate and stuff, so there was a lot of like third-party shit. You'd go and buy a memory card and there's like, here's the Sony memory card, but for the same price there's this one that holds 3 memory cards.
Right.
But yeah, it fucking sucked, because like when they crashed and broke, which they always did, you lost everything. Example of how strong Sony memory cards are. My buddy had a like, I don't want to call it a tree house, but let's call it a clubhouse. That is built for him in the backyard, which we ran a giant fucking extension cord to, so that way we could have a TV and a PlayStation out there, and parents could have a quiet house, and he could have a bunch of friends over being loud as shit outside. So we're out there. It's winter time, by the way, so we're stupid because we're out there playing games. It's not heated and shit, like, but we're just out there having fun, goofing off, being kids. We're out there, and there's no heat. We're just out in the wintertime. We wake up, memory card's gone. Don't know what happened. Just memory card disappeared. And I don't know if somebody got pissed and I was sleeping or whatever, but somebody's like, memory card's gone. And nobody would fess up to how the memory card just magically fucking came out of the PlayStation and just disappeared. I am not kidding you. I want to say 5 to 6 years later, we're cleaning out his backyard and there's this mulch pile and we're cleaning it up, and all of a sudden, there's the memory card. Apparently, one of the brothers got pissed off that the other one was playing and fucked up his save or something, took the memory card and threw it out the fucking window. Just threw it out of like the window of the clubhouse. We didn't find it till years later. Now we're like, holy shit, look at that. It's a PlayStation memory card. It had been in Illinois winters for 6 years. Cleaned the contacts off, popped it in, fucking worked like a champ. And I'm like, I had third-party memory cards that you looked at wrong and they fucking broke.
Just died, yeah.
Like, what is wrong with this?
So my brother's expecting me to tell this story now. So, again, I mentioned we live by the woods. So whenever we were doing landscaping work around the house in the summers, you just dumped everything in the woods, grass clippings and whatever. So we all had our own Game Boys, Game Boy Color at the time. They were all the different color. Well, Mike's favorite color is green. He had the green Game Boy Color. And because he's a weirdo, he couldn't not have it with him even during yard work. So it was in the cargo pants pocket of his shorts, right? Jesus. Well, sure enough, at some point, he was taking stuff back in the woods to dump it, didn't realize it, but at the end of the day, he's like, "Where's my Game Boy?" And it's just gone. He doesn't know what happened to it. And that was it. And same thing. 6 years later, we're back in the woods, just fucking around back there. And, there's like this ever-growing pile that I actually was back there recently, and it's still there, the pile of grass and shit that, had built up over a decade. But, we were back there, and someone's just poking around, and, this bright green box is there. You go, what the hell's this? Holy crap, it's Mike's Game Boy. Same thing. We took it inside. It was, a little dirty, but you cleaned it up, popped in some fresh double A's, turned right on. No problem.
It's ridiculous. Also, Game Boys, you could shoot a goddamn nuclear bomb. It probably if a Game Boy was in Chernobyl, it would still work.
You ever see the I don't know if it's still there, but at the Nintendo World Store in New York, they have like a little Nintendo hardware museum on the second floor, and they have an original Game Boy that survived the bombing during the Iraq
Desert Storm, I think.
During Desert Storm. I mean, the system's all melted and shit, but it's still playing Tetris. They have it turned on, and Tetris is in attract mode, still working on it.
It's just so ridiculous. Yeah, Nintendo hardware is good for them, man. Then again, I remember PlayStation's PS2s, man. the memory cards may have worked well, but like those lasers on those things, man, they would tend to go out. Like Nintendo hardware. I remember like the fucking GameCube had a handle. Like,
I know.
Who took it? It was just like, I'm gonna swing this thing around, la-di-da-di-da, and I'm sure you could drop it down a flight of stairs.
Because if you're gonna carry it to a friend's house, you need that handle, obviously.
Obviously.
What else are you gonna do with it?
The original Xbox you could use to murder a person in the meantime, because that thing is fucking huge. If you went to a murder investigation, it's possible. What, did somebody hit somebody with a giant cinder block? No, that Xbox right there, man. That thing was heavy as hell. Like, I'm so happy Microsoft has gotten their shit together with hardware, because like for a while there, they were just like function over the way it looks.
Oh, I mean, they threw that, when you read the history of the OG Xbox, like they threw that thing together so quickly. Right. Like it's no surprise that it looked the way it looked. But, right. And, it only had a life of what, like 4 years before the 360. So it was clearly like a let's get our toes wet, see how this goes kind of thing.
And then like I remember like when obviously Red Ring of Death happened and like they were terrified. The S was obviously better. But then I remember when they built the original Xbox One, and they obviously built it to never have a heating problem ever. Because that thing was the size.
It was giant.
It was
fans
so
up the wazoo. Yeah.
Big.
Did you get Red Ring on your 360?
Yeah, a couple times.
Yeah, I did too. It happened to me a week before I moved to Los Angeles.
Oh.
And I blamed my roommate at the time for it because he was the last one using it.
Yeah.
And this was the month before they did the whole, okay, fine, we'll fix any Red Ring system. Yeah. But what I did, because that wasn't the case yet, and originally support was telling me like you have to, it's out of warranty, it's a full price replacement. I was like, fuck you, like I didn't do anything. I actually filed a complaint with the Better Business Bureau.
You were that guy?
Someone from Microsoft called me a day later to arrange a repair. Wow. Like, it worked. That's why I did it, because people were saying this was successful. I was like, fuck yeah, okay, sweet. But then, like, this was in the interim, me getting ready to move to Los Angeles, and I iterated them like, you know, it's not going to the address I have on file. I'm moving. I'm going to give you the new address. But I should have just had them send it to my parents. But I was like, nah, this will be fine. They still sent it to my old house in Pittsburgh.
Oh my god! That
I was not going to live in. So I was like, contacting UPS, it took 3 weeks to get to me. Jesus. It was such a shit show. I was so mad.
Yeah, I had it replaced a couple times, and then it was. I think it was until like later on I bought an S model. Like I got it, I think through my work, but like I had an old school 360, and I mean. It Red Ring so many times. I got it replaced officially by Microsoft two or three times. And then, like, I got to a point where I knew a guy who was modding them, allegedly. And I modded it, but then also if there was any issues, he was the one who was like, yeah, I'll fix it. It's really easy. But then, yeah, I eventually got, like, the Slim model, and I was like, wow, this one's, like, really nice, and it doesn't break.
It looks nice, and
it looks nice. And then when Xbox One happened, I was like, what in the fuck? This thing is huge. And I'm telling you, the Xbox One X is like it's so beautiful. Like, it's
I love my One X, yeah.
It's so fucking pretty. Like, when you think about, like, this thing's way more powerful than that one, and it's smaller and prettier, and it has an internal power supply, you're like, what kind of fucking magic? Who showed up at Microsoft to make this shit
They got a little more confident in themselves, I guess.
Right?
Well, so the funny thing is, I never got to see if I was going to get that second Red Wing, because, so I lived in LA for 3 months. I moved back here and ended up moving in with a buddy of mine. He had just moved into this house that his family had owned that belonged to a relative who passed away or something. I forget the exact circumstance. They remodeled it. They were going to try to sell it. But in the meantime, they were like, you can live here. And so I moved in with him. And we moved all our shit in. And 3 days later, someone broke in and robbed us.
Jesus.
And they did not take the Wii, but they took my PS3. Yeah, that was the one that's actually worth any money back then. They took the PS3, which was an original backwards compatible PS2 model.
PS3, right.
And they took the 360, which the biggest loss there was my Mass Effect save file, which was very devastating.
Before cloud saves were implemented, I think, right?
They also took all my DVDs up to and including the S's, because I had them alphabetized, and the copy of Diablo 2 that was sitting on my desk.
Were they in a rush? They got to S? And
I think so.
Not like T through Z?
and then my roommate, the only thing they took from him was his state-issued laptop, because he worked for the government, which was funny, because that prompted like the actual like BCI crime unit to come into our house and like dust for prints and shit. But here's this guy, he's got like the print dusting kit, and he's like, well, give me this box. I was like, no, that's my Wii. He's like, gonna dust it. I'm like, no, you're gonna ruin it. Stop. What are you doing?
Like, real quick, I'm trying to find the person who stole all your shit. If you could have a little courtesy. The only fingerprints you're gonna find are mine.
I want to tell you, I'm like, you want to find it? Let's turn on the wireless controller and drive up and down the street till it connects, because like it's gonna work, okay?
You can always do that. Oh man, dude. Yeah.
So
I had a situation similar. Like my again, we grew up in kind of like a sketchy neighborhood, but my dad let some dude stay at our house and do laundry. He's like, I need to do laundry. He didn't want to go to the laundry room. He's like, you can use my washer and dryer. And he was the only one in the house. Magically, somehow, my PlayStation came up missing. I don't know how, but he showed it. He wasn't there anymore. My PlayStation wasn't either. To the point where, let's say my dad had some friends who he asked to come over, and he quietly went. The guy just nodded and left. And I'm like, I don't know what just happened. If the cops ever ask, I can tell them I honestly don't. I just saw him ask 3 dudes who I've never seen before in my life who look big as fuck. He just told them, like, okay. And then literally, like, they came back with my PlayStation. Like,
nice.
I was like, I don't want to know what you did to that fucking dude, but I got my shit back, so I'm cool.
Good for me.
Yeah, right? That was an interesting one, because I was like, Dad, who are these guys? And he just kind of was like, he was kind of in the mode, he's like, the less you know, the better. Fuck off. Yeah. Go somewhere else. Okay, Dad. No, I'll just leave you alone.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I'll leave you alone, because I don't want you sick of these 3 dudes on me either.
Right,
so.
Right.
Yeah, it was fun times. So I can't imagine. You know, nowadays if your stuff gets stolen, oh well, cloud saves, yay. Just go.
Yeah, at least you got that going for you.
So when you moved out, like, you had, so obviously, like, at that time there was PS3, but you had everything yourself then. Like, you were getting to the point where, like, obviously you're making money, you're able to buy your own shit then.
Yeah, yeah. What was that? College? Yeah, some.
Yeah. But I mean, like, again, though, at least, so was there ever a time when gaming wasn't a main hobby of yours?
No, not really. Well, so, I mean, obviously what really cemented it was what the time I moved out to LA. That was the summer of 2007 after I finished college, and my brothers were still in school themselves. And the first week I was out there, my brother Mike and I would have these like epically long phone calls, just because it was the shit we usually talk about, but we weren't around each other anymore. And this was like the heyday of the gaming podcast, when like One Up Yours was in full swing.
Right.
And we got the crazy idea in our heads, like, well, if we're gonna do this, like, on the phone all the time, let's do our own podcast. Let's figure this out. Because at the time, he was going to school for a degree in what's called, I believe, creative writing and editing, with the goal of getting into the industry as a journalist. And I had not, at the time I was pursuing acting. What do you know, I moved back to Ohio after 3 months.
Shocker.
But then I wanted to get into multimedia production, which is what my master's degree is in. So it was like, okay, well, you could use a podcast and gaming as like a platform for your journalism. I could use it as like a thing for my technical skills. And so in the summer of 2007, we started doing what we still do today, the Exploding Barrel podcast. And it, in a weird way, that's like, it's put this weird pressure on me to always be playing something new and different every week, because I need something to talk about for the show.
Right.
The joke amongst all my friends and my brothers is I don't beat a lot of games, which I'll admit to, it's true. I don't finish a lot of the ones I start. And part of I was a kid, you go to the buffet, I want one of everything. Like I don't fill up one plate with just the chicken. I need to have a little bit of chicken, a little bit of the beef ribs, and do that.
That's such a good analogy. That's such a good analogy, because I am the type of person where I'll get a game and I'll play it. I don't buy a lot of games. And you're right. When I go to a buffet, I will load up on that catfish because it's good as shit and I don't need anything else. I'm good.
No, see, I want just a little bit of everything to try it all. So like that's obviously made gaming a big part of my life, but it was never going to go away. I think a lot of people, especially for our age, when we were playing these games as kids in the 90s, it was still new. So it was always like, well, you'll stop doing this when you grow up.
Right.
And you want to say to those same people, did you stop watching TV? Like, did you stop listening to music? Like, this is our thing now.
Right.
I feel kind of vindicated in that, the way the kind of society is played out with gaming as a hobby. My wife's not a gamer, but she doesn't care or think anything different of me that, you know, I play a lot of games. You know, I don't watch a lot of TV. I don't do a lot of other things for entertainment. I watch Game of Thrones. Like that's about it. Like I don't sit down and watch TV ever.
Right.
Because you know, my thing is, if I'm going to sit and watch a show for an hour, that's an hour of World of Warcraft I could have played. I'm going to go do that instead.
Right.
So yeah, it's not going anywhere for me. I don't think it ever will.
No, that's nothing wrong. I mean, the other thing too is I think back then, like, we just didn't see too many adults doing it, just because, like, at the time it was more of like a kids thing. Like, people thought, like,
you know, it's called video games, and it's still kind of an unfortunate term, but what are you going to do? Call it something else now? Like that's the name. It's not going away.
It's like video games now, like, back then though, it was more aimed at a younger audience. Like,
yeah, it was a toy. That's why I went to
toy.
Toys R Us.
Exactly.
KB Toys not having a Saturn was a big deal, and
right, exactly. But I mean, I think when obviously people were playing like NES and growing up, but like PlayStation started having like the more mature games. And I'm not talking about mature as far as content. I'm talking about just like as far as like graphic content. I'm talking like just storytelling and
like
graphic.
Final Fantasy VII, you look at that, or Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah. Those types of games, getting people to the point where, like, hey, by the way, this is a video game, but this is telling a story that is like on epic proportions of movies.
It's a narrative. It's not just a high score leaderboard in an arcade.
Correct, right. And then obviously I think now, like, you're right though, like the people who had started NES and growing up, going forward, you know, now video games are just such an easy thing to be around. And now, especially with how storytelling in gaming has gotten so more advanced and so, in my opinion, better, just because technology has allowed it to be better. Like, you know, you looking at how game storytelling is done now, whereas, you know, before it was done with more music and just, you know, there wasn't voiceovers, there wasn't any of the shit. Now you have full on actors doing motion capture, facial capture, dialogue, like writers on fucking games. Like, it's insane now to where, you know, there's people out there who don't really play games, but will sit there and watch somebody play the Telltale series, you know, just because it's a great story. So,
well, it's funny. Like, you know, back in the days, it was like, I want to see like cool movies based on video games, which just didn't exist. But now, like, you know, they keep talking about doing an Uncharted movie finally. I'm like, why
did we want movies from fucking video games, and then none of them were really good?
No, but it's like, why do I need an Uncharted movie? I got the game, and it's on par with the movie production wise. Like, why do I need a movie for?
Like, as far as a movie goes, I don't think you could do games as a movie's justice, because you're talking about games that are most of the time bigger than 2 hours, and most movies aren't bigger than 2 hours. So like, when they did an Assassin's Creed movie, I was like, get the fuck out of here. You're going to tell that story in 2 hours in a solid way? No, you're not going to be able to. However, when they say, hey, The Witcher's turning into a Netflix series, I was like,
yeah, that's cool.
That's cool, because you're giving them way more than 2 hours. I mean, an episode could be an hour, and you have 16 episodes.
Right. And even still, that's a bit of an outlier, because I guess it's more book-based than game-based.
Well, even still, like, if you took a really long RPG, and even if you added your own stuff to it, like, you could take, like, a 40, 50, 60-hour game and, like, make it into a TV show if you want.
Well, look at Castlevania on Netflix. You know, exactly. Like that seems like a good example.
You could do that. I mean, you could have enough lore and characters and storytelling and stuff to make it a TV series. Like, TV would work more for games just because of it being a longer form rather than a 2 hour movie. Like, that just doesn't
for sure
work. So, but we had the Super Mario Brothers movie, which was fucking trash, if everybody remembers.
But when I was a kid, I loved the shit out of it.
You know why? Because we were kids, and kids are stupid.
Absolutely.
Like, real quick, I used to love Power Rangers. And guess what? I watched that first season of Power Rangers. It's horrendous. I apologize to my mother when I realized that. I'm like, I'm so sorry I made you watch this shit. I'm so sorry I made you take me to that god-awful movie, and people can say it's still good. I'm sorry it's not.
Yeah. So when I was, that time in between when I finished college before I moved out to LA, I got to work as a film extra on this miniseries shot for Spike TV called The Kill Point.
Okay.
You probably never heard of it. It was an 8-part miniseries that starred Donnie Wahlberg and John Leguizamo.
Jesus.
And I was a SWAT officer in this show. And I was supposed to just be there for a day, but then I ended up getting asked to film for 3 weeks in all these interior scenes in the ops center and the bank where this hostage thing happened. John Leguizamo played the leader of the hostage takers.
Yes,
I never got to interact with him or anything, but I talked to a few of the crew who had spent time with him. I was like, what's he like, you know, as a person? So it's really cool, actually. he'll chat with us, but you can't bring up the Mario movie. It really pisses him off. I was like, I did not realize that'd be a sticking point for him.
It's like triggering, because he probably dude, I bet you he did that movie, and I don't want to say he was blinded by it, but I bet he's like, dude, Mario's popular.
Yeah, and he was like a young and upcoming actor. It was probably like a big career move.
Yeah, it was probably his big break.
Bob Hoskins is in this, and Dennis Hopper.
This is going to be amazing. This is going to be the big blockbuster hit, and then it came out, and everybody's like, the fuck is this? Like, who approved any of these things? And I'm sure, dude, that thing on Rotten Tomatoes probably has a 5%. Like,
oh, sure, it's something atrocious.
It's it's real bad. But I can imagine him being a bit bitter. 21% on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm sorry,
higher than I thought.
I should put some respect on your name, Super Mario Brothers movie. And the tagline for the movie is, "This ain't no game."
No game.
God damn it. Poor John Leguizamo. But again, like, dude, you know what's funny now is, like, you've gotten to that point where you could either be super pissed about it, or you could go
just
full on into it and just go to Comic-Cons. And, like, there's another thing you can go to a Comic-Con for. I was Luigi in Super Mario Bros. Movie. Just go with that.
Well, it's not like he's had a shitty career. And like
sure.
Just play up the camp of it. Be like, yeah, I did that.
That shit happens. I love how, like, The Rock made fun of the Doom movie. He's like, that Doom movie, god damn. Yeah, it happens. So, I would, as far as it goes, I had mentioned this earlier before the show started. Obviously, you got to a point where now you're buying your own games and all that stuff. People get bad games as gifts, and that sometimes sucks. But what is the worst game you bought with your own money?
So I knew you were going to ask me this, and I tried to think about it a little bit. And if I had to pick, and it's a little bit of an unfair choice, but I'm going to say Final Fantasy 13. The part of the reason for that, I really liked Final Fantasy 12. This was like the next gen Final Fantasy, big hype, blah blah blah. And I found out the night it was coming out. I was living by myself in Pittsburgh, going to grad school, and I found out the Best Buy near me was doing a midnight launch. I was like, sweet, I'm going to go to this midnight launch, get this game, play. It's going to be awesome. And I went by myself, showed up, like I got like a Frisbee or something, I think, is like a little piece of swag.
Because that makes sense.
And I thought it was going to be this big thing. There were like 6 other people there. Like, no one cared. But I take it home, I fire up the game. At first, like, oh my god, look how good this looks. It's so incredible. And then the story started. Have you played Final Fantasy 13?
I haven't, no.
So, my brother gets so pissed at me. There's actually, if there's ever been a meme to come out of our podcast, this was one of them, where I was bitching about the game at the time, and I was like, this story doesn't make any sense. Like, what do you mean it doesn't make sense? I don't know, like, they're on a train. I don't know why. There's a guy with an afro and a baby chocobo in it who, like, doesn't know the main character, but they, like, act like they know each other, but they don't know each other. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what the stakes are. And he's like, they're being shipped out. They're being purged. I'm like, what are you talking about? Being purged of what? And he starts showing me all these proper names of me. I go, it was stupid. I didn't understand. I didn't care about any of it. Then, like, you start the game, and it was kind of the criticism of the time that everyone kind of, like, it was like the joke, but it's true. You just walked in a straight line. There was no exploration. And Final Fantasy 12 was like this big open world you could explore. So many open world
aspects of it.
Yeah. And 13 just had none of that. I played it for like 3 hours, and I was like, nope. That was $60 down the drain. Stayed up till 2 a.m. for nothing for that one. Cool.
I'd be more pissed staying up till, I lost sleep for this shit. This sucks. I mean, it happens. I mean, like I said, there's people out there who will probably hear this and go, what the fuck are you talking about? But
I bet if I went back to the game with my expectations in check, I'd probably get some enjoyment out of it. And then, too, like, they did that thing where they had that first trailer for the game that looked incredible. Well, I mean, and you could tell the game was, like, trying to replicate what that trailer showed, but it wasn't even close.
Well, also, too, I remember, some people get like that with certain games. Some people get hyped. My worst game I bought with my own money is Destiny. I fucking hated
you talked about. So I've had such a love-hate relationship with Destiny over the years.
That game, okay, I love Bungie. I've loved Halo forever. Bungie's a great studio. I'm not shitting on Bungie. What I'm shitting on is Peter Dinklage telling me to hold the fort down over and over and over and over. And I remember just, like, the hype of this game and, like, it's supposed to be all day. It was just so repetitive. And again, like, I get it. Vanilla Destiny sucks. But then everyone's like, but dude, just come back. After this expansion, it's great. I'm like, cool. Why didn't you just wait to release the game until that expansion made it that much better?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're telling me, so basically everybody agreed with me that the game sucked. You guys basically played it because you wanted it to be good, but it truly wasn't. And then a year later, an expansion came out that actually made it good. Go fuck yourself. I'm not playing this.
So my whole thing with that game was like, I played the alpha and the beta that summer, and I was like, this is incredible. Like,
right.
But, like, you know, like, I can't wait to see where this goes.
Right.
And then you get the game, and it's like, oh, that was it.
That was it.
It didn't go anywhere. But, you know, everyone was like, oh, you got to do the raid. The raid's incredible. I was like, well, fuck the raid. There's no matchmaking. So finally, it was me and my brothers. We got 2 of our friends. That was 5. So we needed a 6th. So we literally got into the tower, ran up to the first person we saw, circled around him, and started doing dance emotes, while one of us got an Xbox Live to message him to be like, we need a 6 for the raid, are you in? It was some guy named Mitch, actually. Mitch Nagar.
I got rid of that game.
I was going to say, I don't think it was you.
Nope, I got rid of that shit a day
That'd
later.
be really funny if it was, though. Damn. He's still on my friends list, actually. But yeah, so he was like, okay, cool. And so he like gets in our party chat with it, and I warned him off the bat. I said, just so you know, we're all friends in real life. So like, if we're calling each other like, you know, homophobic slurs or things like it, it's cool. It's cool. You know, please don't be alarmed that strangers are yelling at each other. And, you know, we did the raid. We got halfway through it. We were having a blast. And it's like, okay, like, we're not going to finish it tonight. Mitch, are you cool like Sunday night? He's like, yeah, guys, I'll be on. Sure enough, Sunday night, 10 o'clock, there he was. We did the raid. It was awesome. It was really great. I was like, that was such a hassle. Like, logistically. I never did another raid in that game. In Destiny 2, I did most of the first raid, but we never did the final boss because, again, we didn't finish in time and couldn't get the group back together. I hate that. I hate, like, Bungie's weird insistence, like, well, we can't matchmake it because it just won't work. Well, I guess I'm not playing it then. Like, World of Warcraft did a thing that I don't understand why they haven't adopted where, you know, there's the raiding in World of Warcraft, but then there's they call it LFR, the looking for raid, which is like a kind of stripped down, dumbed down version of the mechanics, but at least you get to try it. You get to see what's going on. You get the story beats. And that's how I play World of Warcraft, because I don't have the time to hardcore raid World of Warcraft. My brother does, because he lives by himself and has no kids. And that's great.
Good for him.
You know, exactly. That is not in the cards for me, so I'm glad I get to do that. Now, I like fundamentally, I like Destiny 2's mechanics a lot. Like the shooting and everything feels great. But even like with all these talks of how good it is post this latest expansion, and you know now Bungie owns it, they're not shackled by Activision. Like I was tempted to like jump back in, but I'm like I have no idea what's going on in this game. There's like all these new systems and new currencies. Right. I'm like, I don't have time to learn this. Now, I feel the pain a little bit because I am a huge Anthem fan.
Oh, no.
Yes, I love Anthem.
Poor guy.
No, but my only poorness in it is just I'm so frustrated with like everyone wanting this game to like just shut down. I'm like, no, it's a good game. Yeah, it needs more content, but like none of these games have ever launched in a perfect state. Like they all need some work. They all need to like
that game so quickly. EA's like done with it.
I love it.
They're done with it.
They're not done with it. They've like said so many times they're not done. Like if you don't want to trust EA, you don't want to believe them. I can't do anything.
No. I'm not. I'm just saying like if it doesn't make them dollars, they're not going to give a shit. Sorry.
They're not. Said over and over they're going to keep supporting it. I don't see a reason not to believe them yet. Yeah. But I just like it. I play just about every night. I have like 180 hours into it. It's just really fun.
My buddy got to a point where it almost bricked his Xbox One X like 3 times, and he's like, I'm done with this fucking game, and he uninstalled it so fast. If people wanted to check you out and all the cool things you are doing on the internet now, where would they go?
Best place is on Twitter, where I am at AJ Guy. From there, you could find me tweeting about the Exploding Barrel podcast, which I mentioned I do with my brother. We do weekly-ish shows. He's traveling a lot right now. Oh, I never told the happy ending to us doing a podcast. So I am the media director of a trade school system, and he is the reviews editor for GamesBeat.com. So, hey, we did it.
Nice.
But he's actually leaving for E3 Judges Week this week. So I don't know when we're going to. Yeah, I know. So our schedule's been erratic because he was at Blizzard last week. So Yeah, I know, right? Real tough, real
Living
tough.
the dream.
I'm trying to get him to do your show because I know you reached out to him, but he's like, I gotta wait till summer when I'm done traveling. I was like, okay, but yeah. So Twitter's the best place.
It's so funny. I literally messaged him today. Were you still interested in doing my show? Yes, but I probably need to wait until after E3 if that's okay. I said, sounds good. I'll message then.
So he's not bullshitting you. He actually is.
No, now I know the exact reason why. No, I'll fucking leave him alone.
Yes.
Let him do his shit.
Yes. So, otherwise, I don't know. There's another thing we're working on that is in the early stages. All of my brothers and I. If you like going to Disney World in the 90s, I'll tease it here. Follow my Twitter. There's a thing coming.
And I'll link to the
I'll
show
leave it there
for everything, his Twitter and his podcast. So if you want to check him out and all that. So, dude, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. This has been fun.
Thanks, man. All right, and again, thank you, AJ, for being on the show. Guys, if you want to check him out on Twitter, go ahead and follow him at AJ Guy on Twitter. He'll have links, of course, of everything you want to check him out there, as well as his website, ajguy.com. Guys, if you want to be on the show just like he was, send me a tweet at MitchPower1116 on Twitter, or at the podcast Twitter page, which is at GUG Podcast on Twitter. We also have a Facebook group. Just search up Growing Up Gaming on Facebook, as well as on YouTube. You can catch the show there at just search up GUG Podcast on YouTube. Recently, I know I record these episodes kind of really ahead of advance. Recently, I had passed 10,000 unique downloads, which for me is kind of one of those milestones, right? I know some people do that in a month. Some people do that in an episode. Some people do that in an hour. But for me, that was a really big milestone that I wanted to hit. I really appreciate your guys' support. Everybody who's paid, listened to the show, downloaded it, shared it with buddies, been a guest. I just really want to thank every one of you guys, for all your guys' support. Obviously I got plenty of episodes to go and I don't plan on stopping anytime soon. So definitely hitting 20,000 faster than, as fast as I possibly can. So again, guys, thank you guys so much for all you guys' support each and every week. I will catch you guys next week with another new episode. See ya.